Hello, and welcome to the Project Good podcast. I'm your host, Anne Marie Hilton. Project Good is a social impact podcast interviewing experts and advocates about the pressing problems that we face globally and hearing how they suggest we move forward in the future. The Project Good podcast is brought to you by Project Good Work. The goal of this podcast is to inspire people and organizations to develop a mindset that can move others to positive action regarding the complex social issues facing people and the planet. For our June special edition, we are focused on leadership in a changing society. It is 2024, and it's an election year in the United States. The U.S. election is not only important to the citizens of the United States, but to those worldwide, as the U.S. tends to set standards for the world stage. The last 4 U.S. elections have provided a series of surprises not anticipated by the American public or global society. Each of these elections have shaken worldviews of the United States, global economy rankings, and what leadership means. Picking the right candidate has become more critical than ever, not only from a safety and economic perspective, but from a humanitarian perspective. Leadership today requires very different tools than in the past because of the changing global marketplace, technology, and a movement of individualism sweeping across the world. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Nikki Ballou, best-selling author of 10 published books, 2 of them New York Times bestsellers, a podcast host of the Thought Leader Revolution podcast and The Sovereign Man, and an E-Circle founder. Originally born in Tehran, Iran, to Christian parents, he has lived in 5 countries on 3 continents, which has helped shape his worldview and experience. His company, E-Circle, works to bring out the best in CEOs, athletes, and business owners reaching for the stars. Nikki believes that change is possible if you really want it and are willing to put in the work. Let's get into the interview. First, let me introduce our guest, Nikki Ballou. He's the #1 international best-selling author, the 2-time New York best-selling author. He is an in-demand and highly inspirational speaker to corporate audiences such as RBC, Lululemon, Royal LePage, and Torstar Media. He's an advisor and confidant to some of the most successful and dynamic entrepreneurs in Canada. He's the founder of E-Circle Academy, where he runs a year-long mastermind and educational program working with coaches, consultants, corporate trainers, clinic owners, realtors, mortgage brokers, and other service-based entrepreneurs, positioning them as authorities in their niche. He's the creator of the Thought Leader and Heart Leader TM designation. As the host of the #1 podcast in the world on thought leadership, the Thought Leader Revolution, Nikki has interviewed over 500 of the world's top leaders. Welcome, Nikki.
Anne Marie, thanks so much for having me. An honor to be here.
Yes, I'm excited about this conversation because obviously this is a critical year, I think, in so many aspects, right? It's the year 2024. It's an election. The world is, I guess, in an upheaval in so many different ways. And so I thought you were the perfect person to talk to because it really is about having guidance so that we know where we go next. But before we dive into all the questions, I always ask a personal question just to get to know someone a little bit more, and I will try to understand their heart and mind. So what would you say has inspired you most in your life?
That's a great question. My father. I'm originally an immigrant from the Middle East. I'm a Christian from Iran. When I was 11 years old, the Islamic Revolution took place in Iran. And my late father, God rest his soul, he could see the writing on the wall. This wasn't going to be a place to raise a Christian family. So he and my mom, they made a plan, and they got my brothers and I out of Iran. Now, at the time, I was a kid, right? I didn't want to leave my home. I didn't want to leave my friends. But in retrospect, it was the single greatest thing Dad could have done for me and my 2 brothers. That he and my mom took us from a legacy of tyranny to a legacy of freedom. I believe every human being inside of their breast beats the living heart of freedom. We all want to march to the tune of our own drummer. We all want to chart our own course. And without that, you can't have free expression. Without free expression, you can't have free enterprise. Without free enterprise, you can't have entrepreneurs choosing the path that they want to create their business inside of. So I just became a big champion for freedom. That kind of informs me day to day. And my dad, amazing man. If you knew him, Anne-Marie, and you were looking for work, he would sit you down in his office, call all his entrepreneur buddies until he got you a job. If you were trying to start a business, he'd sit down with you. He'd help you get what you needed to get your business going, even if you were going to compete with him, because he didn't really believe in competition. And if you were trying to buy a car or a house, you didn't quite have enough money, he'd top you up with a loan that he'd never let you pay back. And a lot of people ask me, Nikki, this sounds like too good to be true. I mean, who would do that? And I say, well, the late, great Napoleon Ballou. Why would he do that? Well, because he was a devout and committed Christian. He believed he'd been blessed by God and his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and it was his duty to share those blessings with other people. And then secondly, he did it because he could. He was rich. He was successful. And it's my belief that, you know what, my father was the role model that I patterned myself after. When I was a kid, he'd tell me, son, that person in front of you, that's someone's mother, that's someone's daughter, that's someone's sister, that's someone's wife. That's a hero to somebody. Maybe someone like you burned them, and it's your job to restore their faith in humanity. Remember, son, life is about people. And I'd say, okay, Dad. He said, business is about people, not about numbers or money. I said, Dad, but come on, without money, you can't do business. He said, that's true, son. But without people, there's no need for money. See, all business is it's about solving problems for people for profit. You solve acute problems for amazing people for an awesome profit. That's the awe-inspiring purpose of business. And when I got into business, I wanted to be like my dad. I wanted to be somebody that people looked up to. And so I wanted to help entrepreneurs. And when I got into the business of helping entrepreneurs, it was really a straightforward thing. There's a lot of good people out there with really great morals and ethics, but not very good sales and marketing skills. They were kind of afraid of selling. They were scared of it. They didn't want to be seen as pushy. They didn't want to reek of commission breath when they walked into the room. But the problem with that is that there'd be clients that they could be working with who they wouldn't go after. And then some charlatan marketer who didn't care whether they delivered or not would come get the business. And then everybody lost. I mean, they would lose because they wouldn't get the business. The client would lose because the problem wouldn't get solved. Even the charlatan marketer would lose because the law of what goes around comes around would bite him in the butt. Me, I help good people reframe selling. Selling is an act of service. It's an act of love. And if you don't sell, you don't have a business, right? And I teach people to put the attention on their clients and not put the attention on themselves. If you put the attention on yourself, you're going to be wondering, I wonder if they like me. I wonder if they're going to do business with me. Will they buy from me? If you put the attention on the client, you're thinking, how can I help this person? What's going on with them? How do I help ease their burden? And when the focus is on other people and not on you, people can feel it. And that's when your sales go through the roof.
Wow. You know, I was thinking, I know you're in Canada, but, you know, June is the perfect month, as you were telling me about your father. And I have to say, you know, I'm sure you've already thought about this. You were lucky to have such a father. And or I would say blessed, right? And also this is the month, June is the month of Father's Day. So what an inspirational message of what having kind of, I would say, I'll call it generational leadership, right? Because that's what parents are supposed to be doing, right? They're supposed to be guiding their children and leading them, which, you know, is unfortunately in our current society up for question. I
agree with that 100%.
And so, you know, so you instantly show that leadership really starts, you know, as soon as you, I guess, jump out of the womb, right? That you are inspired by, you know, obviously the people around you, but your first teachers, you know, should be, or, you know, we hope to be your parents and family, right?
Yep.
And so if those people don't understand the bigger picture, is what I am seeing that you have expressed of the type of person that your father was, that he was a big thinker and he was expansive in his mind, because he saw that if we help one, we actually help many. And so what a gift that you had in him. So I'm touched that that is a great thing to show how inspired you've been, and it makes sense of what you do. And so right now, that's a perfect transition actually into what are leaders missing today. So what would you say that leaders are missing in today's world?
Huh. I think
Is that a big question?
human beings in general are missing a purpose. You need a purpose. You need a why. You need a reason. You know, if you have a reason, then you're going to be able to win. If you don't have a reason, then you're not. Simple as that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So purpose is important. And then, you know, I even have to say, and not to get too deep into it, but I think it has to be addressed because even the word purpose, when you say purpose now, you know, I understand, you know, you have to have you know, your reason for being and understand that you are here not just to eat, sleep, you know, take up resources and die, right? But there is a movement on the planet. I think I believe there's like, and you can tell me if you think differently. I think there's a movement of two silos, right? There's the people that I would call kind of awake and see that there's a bigger, there are bigger things than just yourself and just even like the country that you live in. And then there's other people who are like, who cares? We're going to die anyways. Do what you need to do, get what you need to have, and then, you know, do the best you can. And when your time's up, your time's up. And I personally believe that is the tug of war that is going on the planet. Do you feel that, I guess, do you see it as a tug of war that's going on with two different silos of people or two groups? Or how do you see that, how are things shaping up in your mind?
Yeah, you've got people today that I agree with you 100%. You got people today that are awake, that they see that there are dark forces that are trying to manipulate what we think and what we believe. And they're aware of it, and then there's the rest of them that are just blindly sleepwalking into it. I mean, if you think about this, okay, 20 years ago, right, in America, as an example, the political left was anti-war, right? They didn't want to go fight wars. They were like, oh my God, we need to stop doing that. And today, the same political left is pro-war. They're the ones that are cheerleading the war in Ukraine. Now, how the heck do people do that? How is it that their inconsistency in their core philosophy allows them to hold both of those ideas at the same time? So if you're not awake, you're going to look at that and go, oh, there's no inconsistency in that. The Iraq war was wrong, the Ukraine war is right? But if you're awake, you're going to go, wait a minute, if war is wrong, then war is wrong. You know what I mean? But it doesn't matter if my side agrees with it, right? What matters is that I'm an independent thinker. I can think for myself, and I can see what's right and I can see what's wrong. So I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying.
Yes, and that's a good question. You're talking about, I guess, even values. So how, as a leader, because I believe that leaders are the people who are supposed to embody the values that are of an organization, or, you know, in this case, we're talking bigger of, you know, I don't know if I should laugh, of, you know, how governments or, you know, society is supposed to go. So how can you say that leaders can ensure that the decisions that they make in these different places now, everywhere from, you know, a company to, you know, the political arena, that they align their values and principles, and also the interest of the people, or sometimes their stakeholders if you're in a company, rather than just focusing on the financial gains? Because all of it, you know, when it boils down to it, whether we want to disagree or not, is, you know, there's an undercurrent of money, or it's not even an undercurrent. It's sometimes blatant that it's about money.
I think that we're living in a time that really, in many ways, is not very different from how the world has been throughout history. You've always had a certain group of people that are elites, that are in charge, and what they want to do is they want to stay in charge, and they want to make money from the masses. I don't think that's changed over the last 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 years. And if you're an emerging leader today, you ought to study history. That's the first thing I'd have you do. I read a lot of history. I read Roman history, Greek history, Persian history, Chinese history. Find out how things were. And there's an author by the name of Stefan Arnio, and he said the costumes change, but the play and the cast of characters never really does.
Yes, and so there's also now in this introduction. So yes, I agree. Obviously, as they say, history repeats itself, right?
Yeah.
Now, in this repetitive mode, there's always been, I guess, a rebellious sect in every time, right? That's what makes it, I would say, interesting, right? That's the thing that adds the flavor to the whole mix of the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
But now, I think because we have technology and people are able to obviously connect faster, and you can be, in Timbuktu, but talking to somebody in Greenland in minutes, right? And so in this, now that people are able to connect and information that used to take a while to travel, or even different ways of living, and I believe also culture gives you different worldviews, are now being blended together, and so it's changing how people look at life. And then, of course, we have to think that we all got lockdown for years in a pandemic. So we had time to sit literally in the corner at home and just think like, what the heck am I doing, right? And so with all of those things that have come together, there's now this uprising, as I mentioned in the introduction, of individualism that is sweeping across the world, making, I think, it maybe a little bit different or difficult to be a leader. So how do we, I guess, confront this new movement of individual that is sweeping across because of all of these new introduction of things from technology and from the fact that we went to a global pandemic crisis?
It's a different conversation that I expected us to have, but I'm glad you asked the question. I think everyone needs to think for themselves. You got to become sovereign. I run a men's organization. It's a movement of men. It's called the Sovereign Man Movement. And we say that every man should become sovereign. What does that mean? That means, first and foremost, that you've got to be physically sovereign. So you got to be physically strong enough to be able to go out there and take care of yourself physically. You got to be strong. You got to be powerful. You got to be able to lift things. You got to be able to defend yourself. That's all important. Secondly, you got to be financially sovereign, i.e. you got to make enough money to take care of yourself and the people you love. Thirdly, though, you got to be intellectually sovereign. That means you got to think for yourself. Too many people outsource their thinking to the government, to the media, and to other outside organizations. Don't do that. They don't have your best interest at heart. They just don't. That's a fact.
Yes. And I in the conversation I'm taking, because I think this is my thoughts, and you can tell me how you look at leadership. But I think that leadership, if you're going to be a leader, you have to first examine yourself. I guess if you were going to give people 3 steps, if they are now going to enter a leadership position, either at a company or they would like to, start leading in the times that we're in, I guess, a movement. What are the 3 key things? I know there's more, but if we narrow down to the top 3, what things should they really strive to work towards as individuals?
Well, I think I spoke about it in the previous segment, right? First of all, you gotta seek sovereignty, right? And to be sovereign, it means to be self-sufficient. And that means you got to be physically healthy and strong. You got to be financially healthy and strong. You got to be intellectually healthy and strong. If you allow other people to do your thinking for you, you're toast. You're done.
Okay. I want to jump in a little bit, because there's also another change that's coming aboard, and I want to look at it because it's something that comes up a lot that people ask me about, and also for obvious reasons, it's popping up a lot, is that there's a lot of women that are getting into more and more leadership positions. So do women have to, in taking these roles on, both now women are in, high political positions and also leading companies. Is leadership different based on, I guess, if you're a woman leader versus a male leader?
That's a good question. I got to say, I don't feel fully qualified to answer it because I'm a man. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what my kind of initial thoughts on it are, and they're by no means comprehensive or fully formed at this point. But I think you need to first, as a woman, lead like a woman and not try to be like a man. I think a lot of organizations have been developed and built with a very masculine, hierarchical ethos. And I remember when I was a young man, I worked for the Canadian Census, and my team leader was a woman. It was the single best experience of working for a leader that I'd had up to that point, because she didn't act like a man; she acted like a woman. There was a very much of a mothering instinct in her for all the young people that worked for her. And she was like in her 40s; the rest of us were in our 20s, right? And it really worked. It made me want to fight for her and do what she wanted me to do and work really, really hard. There wasn't a lot of do this or else energy coming from her. You know what I mean? There was a lot of, hey, you're like my son, and I want you to succeed, and I'm going to help you succeed energy coming from her. And it really, really was effective as far as I'm concerned. And my gut instinct tells me that when a woman is in her feminine, it's powerful. When she is forced to be too much in her masculine, I think it depletes her.
So the question I had is about youth in the workforce and companies, that it's different now, or I get a lot of questions about getting these young people to do the work, because not necessarily that they want to do the work or they have an independent streak, or it's not like times before. So how would you say that leaders are to motivate their young workforce and incoming graduates?
I think the incoming graduates are the ones that need to figure out how to motivate themselves. And they need to have an attitude adjustment, a reality adjustment, because no one owes you a job. No one owes you a living. You owe giving your best to whatever opportunity you get. And as long as you're there, you got to do your best and give your best. I think coddling the younger graduates is a terrible idea. Terrible idea.
All right. What would you say that, I just have a few more questions because I know you have a hard stop coming up, but what would you say is the biggest challenges that our leaders are facing today?
Good question. Number one is, are they taking care of themselves? Are they making sure that they're taking care of themselves physically? Are they making sure that they have enough time to decompress, relax, de-stress? That's important, because a lot of leaders are burning out. Secondly, do they have a coach? Do they have a mentor? I think it's really important to invest in yourself as a leader. Part of that is hire a coach, hire a mentor, join masterminds. And then thirdly, are you maintaining high standards toward achieving the goals that are important to you?
Now, here's a question that always comes up about leaders being born or created. But do you think that everyone should aspire to be a leader, like aspire to leadership, or not?
I think at some level we all are leaders if only we lead ourselves. But everybody has to lead So I think aspiring to leadership's a good idea. Does this mean you should be in charge of a group of people at work? Not necessarily. But leadership's about more than just leading a team at work. Leadership is about leading a life and creating a vision that you execute on. And so yes, in that regard, I think everybody should do that.
And now, one of the other things that's, a big topic, but I think you can probably answer it because of the way that you've told me how you were raised. The question I have is, I'm sure you've heard the term of what is servant leadership?
It's all about putting the attention on others rather than yourself. A servant leader is about, how can I help other people? What is it that they're dealing with? And a me first leader is just thinking about what's in it for them. Take the attention off of yourself and put it on others.
And so what would you say, I guess, in today's changing society is going to make, the world of difference, that we can hopefully move towards a positive future, because we are facing a lot of different challenges, right? So there's the regular stuff, right? The basic of economics, but now we have both this, social layer that is going from one extreme to the other extreme. And then we also have the actual planet, right? The environmental thing that you have to think of. And then there's the, I guess, always ethical component. So how is this changed, and what should be, I guess, the goal of the next generation of the leaders so that we can move forward into a better future?
Educate yourself, hire a coach, read a lot of books, and get involved in politics. At the very least, know who your local candidates are, your national candidates, your regional candidates, and vote and fight for the ideas you believe in. Because if good men and women don't pay attention to politics, they'll be ruled by evil men and women.
Yes. And final question. What would you say that you have, because you've interviewed so many different leaders, what has been the underlying theme overall that for the ones that I guess that you think that have been like the most outstanding, what made them stand out to you the most?
There are people with a lot of energy, a lot of passion. Those are awesome. And the other thing that has had people stand out for me are the people who really were in love with what they did, because that came across in how they spoke about it.
I love it. So love was the biggest factor that you saw that made them a champion. And so the reason I love it, of course, being that you have a Christian background, and so do I, and that, in all of these issues that we are, all the issues that we are facing, the biggest thing that we always have to continue to remember is to incorporate an element of love to tie all of these things in. So, like you brought up earlier, the appreciation of having that both the feminine and masculine, and not looking at they are competing against each other, but that they are complementary, and that we need both, and bringing both of those only will strengthen us, as a society, to appreciate essentially who we are as human beings, that we both have, whether you're male or female or whatever, that we have both, and it's not something that you have to, separate. Just appreciate that you have both, and it's wonderful, and it, and contribute your goodness to the world. So I love that. Thank you for that. Thank you, Nikki, for your time and insight. If you'd like to learn more about Nikki Ballou and leadership, go to ecircleacademy.com. If you have a passion for an unserved community, a social justice problem, or simply want to change minds, contact Project Good Work at projectgood.work to start your project of change today. It's that time again. We are preparing for the upcoming Changemaker Conference on September 12th. To find out more and to register, go to changemakerconference.com. To our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Project Good, where we're focused on what matters.